Hello, everybody. Coming to you from District E here in the heart of the nation's capital alongside Tarek El-Bashir. I'm John Walton, a special edition of the Capitals Rink Report. And just wrapping up a short time ago, press conference officially announcing Chris Patrick as the team's vice president and general manager. Different role now for Brian McClellan, and a pretty exciting day for the organization.
John, I felt like things have been moving in this direction for a number of months. You know, those of us who are around the team on a day-to-day basis, like yourself, who travels, you saw Chris on more road trips. You saw him around the team more. Back in August of last year, he was elevated from assistant general manager to associate general manager. So he had already been carrying out many of the roles that he'll be doing now, except for now he's got the title of general manager. Now, instead of just running the internal operations of an NHL team, he's going to be taking phone calls from the other general managers. He's going to be going to the GM meetings and representing the team there. So it's definitely a big step up, but I feel like it's one that he's been working a long time towards. He'd filled just about every single role in this organization's front office for the last 16 years, from amateur scout to pro scout to director of hockey operations. And of course, for a long time, he was the chief liaison between the Hershey Bears and the Caps. In fact, he hired Spencer Carberry and Todd Nelson and deserves a lot of kudos for the back-to-back Calder Cup championships.
You know, there's been a lot of coverage here on Monumental Sports Network here from the site with everybody, but I found myself listening to what was going on stage and just thinking about the legacy that Brian McClellan has cemented here over the course of the last 10 years. And if you go back to 2014, one of his biggest and best moves, there were two of them, and it was really his first day on the job, and that was bringing in Matt Niskanen and Brooks Orpik. The team defensively, the defensive core that came before he took over needed a lot of work. And those were, I think, the beginning of the building blocks that eventually pointed this team toward 2018. And I think he's certainly, going even back to the summer of 2014, gets a whole lot of credit for what happened there.
You know, it's funny. I talked to owner Ted Leontis about this just a little while ago. And I said, take me back to the interview process with Mac. And he said he wasn't the front runner. He came into the office and he was very direct and said, listen, you got Alex Ovechkin, but your back end is shaky. Like, you need two stalwart defensemen, and here are the guys, and here's how we'll fit it into the cap, and here's how we're going to proceed. And apparently his plan was so airtight and explained so matter-of-factly that the
pretty much changed Ted's mind about it back then. And Ted told that story 10 years ago.
Yeah, and the management team was totally taken aback by it. And they're like, that's our guy.
Yeah.
And it was funny. Ted said, you know, before that interview, he said, I only heard Max say maybe 10 words total. Because he was a pro scout who was never around. I mean, he dealt with George McPhee. He wasn't dealing with ownership. So I think about those two players, or Matt Niskanen and Brooks Orpik. But then you fast forward another year, and he traded for TJ Oshie, a player he had been after for a long time. To me,
bit of a fleecing.
Yes, it was definitely a fleecing.
It was a fleecing.
It was a fleecing. Yeah, St. Louis should never answer the phone when Matt calls. But those three players were not only huge contributors on the ice, I feel like they changed the culture of this team. They brought more accountability to the room, the defensemen in particular. But Oshie also served as the heart and soul and kind of the Energizer Bunny, and kind of got everyone going, you know, pardon the cliche, but dragged everyone into the fight. And I think those three players, as much as anyone else, those additions, that's what put the Caps over the top and put them on the path towards the Stanley Cup.
Now, how you get to this day, you think back just over the course of the last couple of seasons, Chris Patrick overseeing what went on one level down with the Hershey Bears. All they did was go back-to-back and winning Calder Cup championships under Todd Nelson, and looking at what they were able to do, the teams that were assembled there, and that has Chris Patrick's fingerprints all over it. So when you look at how that was assembled, what they have coming back even next year, and the environment that the Capitals have given their prospects to grow and thrive, a lot of that over the course of the last couple of years has fallen to Chris Patrick.
And, you know, we're talking about continuity here. I mean, typically when a general manager is hired, he's coming from outside the organization, and he's got to roll up his sleeves and get to work. He's got to learn what they have at the ECHL level. He's got to learn what they have in the pipeline for draft picks. He's got to learn what they have at the AHL level, and then he's got to learn the NHL roster. Well, guess what? Chris Patrick not only knows everyone in the organization, he was one of the guys who hand-selected these players, right? So, it's going to be incredibly helpful to be handing the keys over to a GM who knows the NHL roster, watched many of them grow up in Hershey, but also knows the rest of the league and knows the rest of the AHL, too, because of that role. So the Caps have set themselves up, as Ted said, for the future.